Back in 2001, my team thought Devon Island was just empty ice and wind, but we were wrong. Something lived out there. Something tall, pale, and starving. Something that had spent decades alone in the Arctic until it twisted him into a hunter. I saw him standing on the ridge, watching us through the blowing snow. What happened next will shock you, so stay here to listen. So before we continue, please make sure to like and subscribe to support the channel and comment down below where you're watching from. Thanks. I was 28 then. Staff sergeant in a place that felt like the end of the world. Devon Island. Cold rock, old ice, and wind that never quit. Year was 2001, but it could have been 100 years earlier. Nothing out there but our camp at the Houghton Crater site, some metal huts, a couple prefab labs, and a bunch of people trying to pretend the place was normal. NASA and CSA were running their Mars tests. My team and I were there to keep the generators alive, keep the perimeter sensors up, and make sure no one wandered off into the white and never came back. Protection, they called it. Against what? I didn't know yet. Back then, we all said the only threat was the cold. I'd done remote stuff before. Somalia was dust and heat. This was the opposite. But isolation feels the same no matter the temperature. Long hours, dead silence, too much time to think. I was steady enough for it. At least, that's what the Army kept telling me. Our platoon leader was a butter bar named Dwyer. Good intentions. Zero experience. Real motivated, though. The kind of guy who salutes a damn truck if it's painted green. He relied on me more than he said out loud. I didn't mind. He wasn't arrogant, just green. Doc Lewis was our medic. Calm as still water. Nothing rattled him. He moved slow, talked slow, kept everyone grounded. Then there was O'Hara. Sharpshooter. Barely slept. Eyes always scanning like he was waiting for something to jump out from the ice. Sharp kid. Just wired tight. The civilians were their own world. Dr. Topter, Ishan Kapoor from NASA ran the habitat tests. Real quiet, always scribbling notes, checking sensors. Sorensen from CSA was the geology expert. Sharp mind, steady hands. She was one of the few who actually liked the island. Said the rock told stories. I didn't hear anything in it but wind. Maybe she was built for places like this. All told, maybe 15 of us on any given day. Enough to feel like a small town, but not enough to feel safe. Days started slow, generator check first thing. Frost on every bolt. You tap it wrong, it snaps. Fuel usage next. We kept the tanks wrapped in insulated foam that never seemed to work right. Ice crept into everything. Radios barely functioned. Satellite shots came in chopped and delayed. If you wanted to talk to anyone off the island, you hoped the dish wasn't iced over and prayed the sky stayed clear long enough to finish a sentence. No internet, no comfort, just static and clipped words. O'Hara said the place didn't want us talking to the outside. Back then, we all laughed. Morning runs involved taking the long-range ATVs out with the Canadians and NASA folks to check survey markers. The vehicles always felt one bad turn away from dying. Cold strip batteries fast. You learned to listen to the engines like they were living things. Kapoor and Sorensen spent hours walking lines through the crater, dragging their equipment, collecting soil, setting test markers. My job was eyes out, shotgun on the ATV rack, keeping track of who wandered where. Out there, you got turned around easy. White on white, sky looked like ground some days. Supply drops were always late. Early storms kept pushing them back. Pilots tried, but that island chewed up their schedules. We were rationing more than we liked. Soldiers grumbled. Scientists pretended not to hear. Tension grew little by little. The scientists wanted to push deeper into the crater for samples. We kept telling them to hold back until weather cleared. They didn't like hearing no. I didn't like repeating myself. Dwyer tried smoothing things over. Most times it worked. Others, not so much. Even with people around, the quiet crawled under your skin. No birds, no foxes, no polar bears, nothing. Just rock and wind and old ice. You'd go hours without hearing anything but your own boots. At night it felt worse. Wind hit the metal huts like someone knocking from the outside. I remember telling Doc one night the place felt empty in a wrong way. Not unused, just abandoned. Like everything alive got out before something bad came through. He just nodded, said sleep would help. I didn't argue, but sleep never helped on that island. Most nights I walked the perimeter. Sensors blinked a dull red in the dark. We checked battery packs, made sure the lines hadn't iced over. They picked up nothing but wind. No animals. No movement. Not even drift patterns. Should have comforted me. Didn't. Rumor floated around from one of the Canadian pilots. He said the Inuit elders avoided Devon Island back in the day. Called it a place of wrong air. This island isn't empty, he told O'Hara. It's abandoned. O'Hara thought it was funny. I didn't. We kept everything running anyway. That's the job. Doesn't matter if the land feels off. You tighten straps, shovel out the doors, wide frost from the solar panels, listen to Kapoor talk about Mars habitats, listen to Sorensen talk about the crater's history, then wait for the next thing to break. Days blurred together. Same cold, same wind, same chores, same silence. Looking back, the island was giving us warnings even then. Nothing big, nothing obvious, just a feeling. The sense that the place wasn't dead, just watching. But in 2001, standing in the middle of that crater with my breath freezing on my balaclava, I thought the worst thing we had to worry about was running out of fuel or losing a survey team in a storm. I'd been in bad places. I'd seen people do terrible things to survive. I thought I had a handle on what humans were capable of. I didn't know yet what waited out there in that ice. I didn't know he was still alive. That came later. After the sensors started acting up, after the unease turned into something real. Back then, we were still telling ourselves everything was fine. We were wrong. Things changed slow at first. Little stuff. The kind you ignore because the alternative is admitting something's wrong. Out on Devon, you learn to blame the cold for everything. Equipment glitches, bad readings, nerves. First time the motion sensors tripped, it was around 0300. Wind was steady but not strong. I was awake anyway, checking radio logs. The alert showed a single impact, one heavy step. Not a pattern, not drift, just one. I walked the whole perimeter. Nothing there, no prints, no loose gear, no blown panels. Just quiet. Next night, it happened again. Same thing. One solid weight hitting the ground like something testing the line. I chalked it up to dying batteries, told Dwyer. He nodded like he agreed but looked uneasy. The camera feed started flickering after that. Not dead, just glitchy. Lines across the monitor, static crackles, focus cutting in and out. Once I caught a shape on the edge of frame. Big, upright, too quick to track. Gone before the feed steadied. I rewound it 3 times. Still nothing clear. Just blur and cold light bouncing off the ice. Kapoor said maybe the wiring was reacting to the temperature swings. Something about expansion, metal strain, atmospheric interference. Smart guy. Knew his stuff. But somehow, when he was explaining it, his voice sounded like he was trying to convince himself. Then the drone picked up a heat spot. We weren't using advanced drones back then. These were slow little things, bad video, worse thermals. But this scan came back with a bright shape in the middle of open terrain. Should have been impossible. Everything out there was frozen solid. No animals. No geothermal vents. Nothing warm except us. The heat faded within seconds. But I saw O'Hara watching the playback with his jaw tight. He didn't say anything, but I knew that look. Same one he had after a patrol in Somalia when something didn't add up. 2 days later, the radio caught a distress beacon. Old frequency. Real old. A code that hadn't been used since the 60s. US. Arctic units used it back when they were testing survival outposts. They phased it out before I even joined the army. The signal was weak, choppy, coming in and out like someone tapping an old transmitter with a dying battery. We triangulated it, roughly 20 clicks out from camp. No official sites out there. No reason anything from the 60s should still be transmitting. When I brought it up in the briefing, Dwyer rubbed his temple like he had a headache. Old hardware. Ice shift probably crushed something and triggered it, he said. He said it quick, too quick. Meanwhile, O'Hara wasn't sleeping. He told me one morning he'd seen someone on the ridge. Tall, standing straight, silhouette against the pale sky, gone when he blinked. I asked if he was sure. He said yes. Voice low, eyes red. That afternoon, one of the pilot teams came in with fuel drums. While we were unloading, the Canadian pilot leaned toward us and said something quiet. "You ever hear stories from the Inuit about this place?" I shrugged. "Just that it's empty." He shook his head. "They don't say empty. They say abandoned." The way he said it made the back of my neck itch. When I tried to press him, he just waved it off and told me to stay warm. Around then, Sorensen started getting odd readings from her rock markers. Displacement patterns, heavy compression in the ground where nothing should have stepped. She pointed out a line of rocks shifted like something large kept brushing past them. "Probably frost heave," Kapoor said. She frowned. "Frost doesn't do this." Tension simmered between them. Scientists arguing quietly while soldiers pretended not to hear. Everyone blaming equipment or the cold. Anything but the idea that something big was moving around. Radio comms grew worse. Static buried half the transmissions. When the wind picked up, we lost contact entirely. Satellite bursts cut out mid-sentence, leaving us with half updates and clipped orders. Maintain perimeter was the only clear line we kept receiving. I noticed the soldiers stopped joking at night. Guys who normally snored now lay awake listening to the wind. Every scrape against the metal huts made someone look up. Dwyer kept insisting everything was normal, but no one believed him anymore. The island itself felt different, like it was holding its breath. One evening I stood outside the generator shed watching the light fade behind the crater rim. The land stretched out in a dead quiet plain, flat and empty, but I swear it felt like something out there was staring back. No movement, no tracks, no sound. Just that weight in the air you get right before trouble shows itself. We still had explanations then, logical ones. Defective sensors, bad cameras, old signals, shadows on snow, sleep-deprived eyes. We clung to those explanations like lifelines. Because the alternative, the truth we hadn't dared say yet, was that something was walking the island with us. We didn't know how bad it was going to get. Not yet. The beacon kept hitting our radio in short bursts. Same old code from the 60s. Weak, broken, but steady enough that we couldn't ignore it anymore. After 2 days of bad weather and half-functioning antennas, we finally triangulated the source. Rough guess, but at 20 clicks from camp, middle of nowhere. Nothing on record out there except ice, rock, and more ice. Dwyer didn't like the idea of sending anyone, but command wanted a quick sweep. "Just verify," they said. Probably historical debris. They loved that phrase. Covered everything they didn't want to deal with, so we formed a recon team. Me, Doc, O'Hara, and Sorensen. 4 ATVs, minimal gear, enough fuel to get out and back. Sky was clear, wind sharp across the crater. We left early so the cold didn't kill the machines before we even reached the halfway mark. Terrain got rough fast, cracks running through the ice. Hard snow crust that made the ATVs bounce like they were hitting buried metal. Sorensen kept pointing out formations, muttering to herself about stress patterns, but even she sounded uneasy. It took a few hours to get near the signal. Then the land changed again. Small ridges of ice like frozen waves. And sitting between them, half buried, was the remains of a small camp. Not on any map. Not logged anywhere. 4 huts, wood, and rusted sheet metal pushed sideways by decades of storms. A pole with a twisted piece of wire where an antenna must have been. Boxes half swallowed by ice. Everything looked old. Real old. We shut down the ATVs and let the silence settle. Even the wind seemed quieter. "Looks military," O'Hara said. I saw the stenciling on one collapsed crate, US ASRL, Arctic Research, 1961. Doc walked slow, hands tucked tight, like he expected the ground to crack. "You ever hear of a 60s team out here?" he asked. I shook my head. No one mentioned anything. Inside one of the huts, the roof had caved in. Snow and ice filled most of the space, but under the mess were old rations scattered across the floor. The wrappers were torn open, not by teeth, by something stronger. Wood beams inside the hut were cracked like someone had yanked them apart. Sorensen dug around a frozen corner and pulled out a journal, stiff and fused with ice. She slid it into her pack without a word. Another hut held clothing. Torn parka sleeves, shredded gloves, boots split down the middle. Not damage from time too clean, too deliberate. Something pulled at them. Outside, I noticed a shallow depression in the snow. Bone fragments sticking out, human ones. You could still see the curve of a femur, the hollow center exposed and split down the length like it'd been cracked open for the marrow. Doc crouched next to it. His breath froze in the air in a slow cloud. "This isn't from the 60s, he said. He pointed at a rib bone still showing partial flesh preserved by the cold. "This looks maybe a year old. 2 at most." "Not possible," I muttered. He didn't argue, just kept staring at the pit. Then O'Hara called us over. His voice didn't sound right. "Hey, you need to see this." A few meters from the huts, pressed into a patch of wind-packed snow, was a footprint, one single print. Human-shaped, but too big. Over 20 inches long. Deep enough that you could put your arm down into the depression and still not reach the bottom with your elbow. Something heavy made it. Something that walked upright. We all stood around it, not speaking. Sorensen's hand shook a little when she pulled off her glove to touch the edge. "No animal did this," she said quietly. "Person then," O'Hara said, but even he didn't sound convinced. "Person how?" Doc asked. No one answered. We didn't stay long after that. The place felt wrong, like eyes were on us, like whoever built that camp never left. Or something didn't let them leave. We marked what we found, packed what little we could, and got ready to head back. On the radio, I called it into Dwyer. He reached higher command for guidance. Their response came back after a long burst of static. Log it as historical debris. No further action. That was it. No follow-up questions. No curiosity. Like they'd been waiting for that call and wanted it buried fast. On the ride back, no one talked. Even the ATVs sounded quieter, like the engines didn't want to draw attention. Every ridge, every shadow on the ice made my stomach tighten. By the time we reached camp, the sun was dipping low and the cold hit harder. I parked my ATV and stood there for a minute, trying to shake off the feeling from that abandoned site. Dwyer met us at the main hut. "Report," he said. We gave him the rundown. The huts, the bones, the footprint, the crate markings. His face tightened with every detail, but he kept repeating the same line. "We don't have confirmation of anything outside normal historical remains." Normal. He used that word 3 times, but nothing about that place was normal. Not the torn clothing, not the fresh bones, not the footprint that looked like a person scaled up wrong. We all knew something was bad out there, real bad, but no one wrote it down. No one talked about it at dinner. No one wanted to be the one to say it aloud. That came later, when denial stopped being an option. We got back with the kind of tension that sticks to your clothes. No one slept right. We kept telling ourselves the bones were old, the footprint was some weird melt pattern, the torn gear was just time chewing things up. Lies help you get through the first night, not the next ones. 2 days after the recon, Doc and I thawed the journal Sorensen had pulled from the ice. We did it slow over a small heater, peeling pages apart with metal tweezers. Most stuck together, but a few came free enough to read. The first entries talked about routine stuff, cold, rations, weather. Then things got bad. Real bad. The team in 1961 got trapped by storms for months. Couldn't signal out. Food ran dry. Men started slipping. A note from one lieutenant said, morale broke so hard he expected someone to put a bullet in him just for something warm to eat. Then the name turned up, Corporal Hart. Journal said he handled starvation better than anyone. Too well. While others got weaker, he stayed moving. He'd walk out into storms alone. Bring back scraps of meat no one could identify. The handwriting got shaky in those sections. Words like changed, stretching, bones shifting under skin, not normal anymore. Writer blamed malnutrition, frost damage, cabin madness. Doc closed the journal halfway through. "This is the kind of thing people hallucinate," he said. "Bones don't hallucinate," I said. He didn't answer. Nights grew worse. Footsteps in the dark, heavy ones. Measured, slow, not wind, not ice cracking. Something walking around the edge of camp like it was circling a watering hole. Floodlights flicked off one night. All of them. Surge popped the breaker box even though every line had been checked that afternoon. When the lights came back up, 2 ATVs had been moved, not far. Maybe 10 meters, but dragged, not rolled. You could see the grooves. Kapoor checked the cameras after. Every feed froze for 4 seconds. Static wiped the screens. In one frame, just one, a pale outline stood at the far end of the generator shed before the image warped. "Glare," Kapoor said. "Temperature flare." Nobody believed that. Next morning, we found a polar bear carcass 2 clicks out. Torn to pieces. Bones split clean down the center like someone wanted the marrow. Meat removed in strips. Parts stacked in neat piles. No tracks around it except a long trail of deep indentations spaced like giant footsteps. We weren't supposed to talk about it, but people did anyway. Quiet whispers over powdered eggs and lukewarm coffee. Soldiers sat near the doors now. Civilians jumped every time the radio crackled. That damn beacon got louder too. Stronger. Almost like something was hitting the transmitter again. When the dish lined up just right, we caught fragments of human voice mixed with the static. They weren't full sentences, just broken bits that sounded like someone trying to repeat words they'd heard before. Doc played it twice. On the third playback, Sorensen stepped away from the table like she needed air. The soldiers started doubling shifts. O'Hara barely slept at all. He kept glancing at the ridge lines, scanning with binoculars even when visibility was trash. I'd find him outside at 2 in the morning, standing still, finger on the trigger guard, like he expected something to walk out of the dark. Arguments broke out in the science hut. Kapoor blamed shorted wiring. Sorensen said something big was moving through the crater and disturbing her markers. Kapoor accused her equipment. She accused his. Dwyer tried calming them, but his voice shook. No one wanted to admit fear, but everyone felt it. I saw Dwyer alone once, behind the generator, rubbing his forehead. He didn't notice me. He whispered, "It's nothing. It's nothing." They told me it was nothing. That was the crack in him. Once you hear a leader trying to convince himself, you know the situation's rotten. Sensors kept picking up the same slow pattern around the perimeter. Steps in singles and pairs. Always heavy, always deliberate. Never approaching fully, just circling. On the 6th night after the recon, we found footprints inside 100 meters of camp. Fresh, taller than my boot by half, deep, humanoid shape, heel-to-toe walking pattern. O'Hara crouched near one, his breath shook. "This is a person," he muttered, "a big person. 20 inches. Maybe more," I said. "No human gets that big." I didn't answer. He knew I didn't disagree. We marked them, recorded them, and took photos. Dwyer sent them to command. Static ate half the transmission. When he finally got through, all they said was, "Weather distortions can mimic scale." He didn't buy it. None of us did. The worst part wasn't the footprint. It wasn't the carcass. It wasn't the journal describing a starving man slowly becoming something else. It was the feeling, the sense that whatever left those tracks was thinking, watching, testing us, not charging in, just learning the camp layout, touching our equipment, studying, circling, like a patient hunter that knew we weren't going anywhere. Every night got quieter. Even the wind felt muted. A few of the civilians asked if maybe they should pull back operations. Kapoor suggested hunkering down until a supply plane arrived. Sorensen said staying put would make us easy targets, though she didn't use the word targets. She said points of interest, but the meaning was clear. Dwyer kept repeating, "We are in control. This is manageable. This is explainable." His voice got higher each time. I started carrying my rifle everywhere, even to the latrine trench. Doc did the same. O'Hara kept his slung, but his hand never strayed far from the grip. By the time the seventh night came, the mood was shot. No jokes, no chatter. Just the cold and the sound of people breathing too shallow. Something had come close, real close, and none of the excuses worked anymore. We still didn't know its name, not officially, but I'd read the journal. Corporal Hart was still out there, 60 years alone in the cold, changing, surviving, and now he knew we were here. We reached a point where pretending didn't work anymore. You can lie to yourself about a glitch. You can lie about a footprint. You can almost lie about a torn-up bear. But you can't lie when you see something with your own eyes. It happened on a night when the wind dropped low enough that you could hear every small noise around camp. I was outside checking the generator cabling again. O'Hara stood 20 meters off, scanning the ridge with his rifle slung but ready. He'd been twitchy all day, kept saying the crater felt tight, whatever that meant. I saw him freeze, not slow, hard stop. "Elena," he whispered. I followed his stare. Up on the ridge, between two broken chunks of ice, a figure stood, upright, thin, long arms down past mid-thigh, skin pale in the moonlight like old bone under stretched hide. It wasn't a ghost, not a shadow. Real, solid. The thing didn't move for a full breath. Then its head tilted slow, controlled like it was studying us. That was the worst part, the patience. Not some crazed animal charge, just cold evaluation. O'Hara raised his rifle halfway. "You see it, right?" "Yeah," I said. The figure stepped back once. Then it was gone behind the ice. Not running, just slipping out of sight with a quiet certainty. We both stood there for a long moment, not speaking. Then O'Hara muttered, "That was a man." I didn't answer. My mouth felt dry, because that thing didn't move like any man I'd ever seen. After that sighting, everything in camp cracked. Soldiers stopped pretending they were fine. Scientists huddled in groups, whispering. Dwyer's briefings got shorter. He barely looked up from the table. Then we lost someone. 2 soldiers, Parks and Hensley, went out to fix a motion sensor that kept shorting. It was 100 meters from camp. Good visibility. No reason to be nervous. Routine job. Only Hensley came back. He stumbled into camp without his gloves, without his radio, without half his gear. Eyes wide, wild, mouth working like he couldn't get words out. Doc grabbed him, steadied him, pushed him into the med hut. I walked in a moment later. Hensley sat on the cot shaking, not cold shakes. Fear shakes. He kept rubbing his hands together until the skin started peeling. "What happened?" I asked. He stared at the floor. "It came out from behind the rocks," he whispered. "Tall man. Real tall. Skin cracked. Face wrong. Eyes black. No whites." He swallowed hard. It didn't charge. Just walked straight to Parks. Picked him up like he weighed nothing. Carried him off. Quiet. No noise. I fired once. I think I hit it. Didn't matter. It didn't even look back. Doc and I traded a look, not panic. Just grim acceptance. We'd known this was coming. That night, after 2 hours of tense silence, we heard Parks's voice outside camp. "Elena, hey, hey, hey," slow, flat tone. Like someone repeating a phrase learned by listening to it 100 times. The voice didn't match. Not the rhythm, not the inflection, just sound. Soldiers grabbed rifles. Civilians locked doors. Floodlights swept the ridgeline, but showed nothing. Then we heard the voice again, closer this time. "Help, help, hey, hey, hey," Doc grabbed my arm. "That's not Parks." "No," I said. "It's Hart." A man alone for decades would hear everything visitors said, every shout, every greeting, every curse carried by the wind. He'd pick up words like an animal learns the sound of food being opened. He didn't understand them. He just mimicked the noises. Broken throat, frost-damaged tongue. The flatness wasn't supernatural. It was just a ruined man repeating what he knew people responded to. O'Hara flicked off his safety. "If he comes inside 100 meters, I'm putting him down." "He's not coming inside," I said. "He's testing us." Testing became the new routine. Next morning, the generator shed was torn open. Not destroyed, just pulled apart enough to get inside. Wires ripped from hooks, Fuel cans shifted, tools moved. As if he'd been looking for something specific, Doc knelt by the door. He's probing our weak points. Feels that way, I said. Kapoor tried to salvage the wiring, hands shaking too much to connect anything. Sorensen kept looking over her shoulder at the crater rim like she expected Hart to appear at any second. The staff held an emergency meeting. Everyone packed into the main hut, tension thick. Soldiers sat on one side, civilians on the other. Dwyer tried to talk, but his voice cracked. "We still don't know what we're dealing with," O'Hara cut him off. "We know. It's a man." "Not anymore," Doc muttered. I spoke up. "Hart. Corporal Hart. Corporal Hart. 1961. We saw his camp. We saw his print. He survived out there for decades. Too long. Changed his body. Changed everything." Sorensen nodded. "My geological markers matched the weight distribution. Something tall and extremely heavy is moving across patterns that should be static." Kapoor exhaled sharply. "We're saying a human being has lived out there alone for 40 years? That he's 8 or 9 feet tall? That he—" "Yes," I said. No one argued. That was the moment the whole camp finally admitted the truth. Hart wasn't a monster. He wasn't a spirit. He wasn't supernatural. He was a soldier. One who lived off whatever he could find. One whose bones warped from starvation. Whose joints thickened from decades of cold. Whose muscles developed in ways no normal human would tolerate. A feral survivor with enough intelligence left to stalk, mimic, plan. And now he was hunting us. The rest of the day ran on fear. Every noise made someone flinch. Every shadow seemed shaped like long limbs. That night, O'Hara and I took first watch. Windless, too quiet. Halfway through, O'Hara whispered, "Something's near the storage hut." I lifted my night vision. The feed flickered, just like it had been doing for weeks. But for a short moment, I saw movement. Long legs stepping in the darkness, shoulders hunched, head low. Hart wasn't afraid of us. He was learning us, studying us. A patient predator wearing the memory of a uniform long gone. We knew then that the days of waiting were over. We weren't dealing with a legend or a ghost story. We were dealing with a man who had adapted to survive the deadliest island on Earth while the rest of his team died around him. And now that we'd arrived, he'd added us to the menu. Things were about to get worse, much worse. The storm rolled in faster than any forecast called. 1 hour, the sky was gray. The next, it was a wall of white swallowing the crater. Wind hit hard enough to shake the metal huts. Snow slammed sideways, burying gear, drowning sound. By the time we realized how bad it was getting, it was already too late to call for evac. No flights, no line of sight, no hope of rescue for at least 2 days. Inside the camp, everything felt smaller. Walls creaked, doors rattled. Heaters struggled to fight back the cold slipping through every seam. Soldiers moved slow and tense, rifles slung across their backs, even when walking between huts. I stepped outside only as far as the rope line. Visibility was nothing, pure white. I couldn't see my own boots. Sound came muffled, like the snow ate every breath I exhaled. We were trapped. And we all knew Hart was out there somewhere in that storm. When the satellite dish gave out, I wasn't surprised. Ice built up along the frame, wind ripped the alignment off, and the main cable snapped clean. One moment we were getting static-laced bursts. The next we heard nothing but dead air. Dwyer tried rerouting through shortwave. Signal was faint, drifting in and out in slow waves. No guarantee anyone heard us. The storm drowned everything. By nightfall, the fear inside camp sharpened. People spoke in whispers. Every knock of ice against metal made someone flinch. O'Hara paced back and forth like a caged animal. Kapoor sat in the corner, gripping a mug with both hands, eyes unfocused. Sorensen stared at the door as if waiting for someone to walk through it. We posted guards in pairs. No one outside alone, not after Parks. The wind howled nonstop, a deep roar that shook loose screws and made every structure groan. Somewhere above the noise, we started hearing something else. Footsteps, not close, not pounding, but steady. Slow, heavy, circling again. Doc and I were checking the medical hut supplies when the sound hit the wall behind us. A scrape. Long, slow, like fingers brushing canvas. Then another tap, not random, measured. Doc froze mid-breath. He's testing us again. He knows we can't see through this, I said. We stepped outside just enough to scan the perimeter. Nothing but the storm. But the sounds kept shifting around us, always too far to catch, too close to ignore. Later, while I was outside with O'Hara on another guard check, I saw a shade move through the white. A tall shadow gliding past the corner of the mess hut. Not a blur-solid movement. Gone before the wind blew the snow clear. "He's right there," O'Hara said quietly. "Yeah." We kept rifles up but didn't fire. Not with civilians behind our line of fire. Not with visibility so bad we'd just hit snow. Then the voices started. Low at first. Barely there. "Elena, hey, help, hey," wrong cadence. Wrong tone. Flat and broken. Like someone trying to speak through a ruined throat. Hart repeated names. Mine, Doc's, Dwyer's. Even beats of conversation he must have overheard from outside the camp. Words that didn't string together but sounded familiar enough to twist your stomach. "Saw you, cold, help, hey." I felt the hair on my neck rise. "He's doing this on purpose," O'Hara muttered, trying to get someone to step outside. It worked the third night. One of the privates, Gannon, broke. He'd been twitchy since Parks vanished. Barely ate. Barely slept. When the voices drifted close again, he snapped. Dot tried stopping him, but Gannon pushed past, yanked the door open, and ran out into the white, screaming that he could hear Parks calling him. By the time we scrambled after him, he was gone, swallowed by the storm. We called his name until we couldn't talk anymore. No answer. Just wind. Inside the main hut, the fight nearly broke out. Scientists yelling at soldiers. Soldiers yelling at Dwyer. Dwyer yelling at no one in particular. Everyone blaming everyone. Kapoor slammed his notebook shut. "We need to leave. All of us. Right now." "No point," I said. "Visibility is 0. You'd walk 50 meters and die. So what? Stay here and wait to be picked off one by one?" He snapped. Sorensen spoke up. Quiet but steady. "We wait. We endure the storm, then we move as a group." Her logic was sound, but no one liked it. Doc pulled me aside later. "Morale's done. If something doesn't shift, we'll lose another." "What do you want me to say?" I asked. "That we have a plan." The only plan was to survive long enough for the storm to break. That night, things got worse. We found Gannon's body, laid 20 meters from the camp entrance. Not buried by snow, not dragged around, just placed there, as if set down gently. Bones split open, clean, marrow gone. I recognized the precision. Same as the 60s remains. Same as the polar bear. Hart was showing us what he was capable of. What he'd been doing for decades. A warning. A message. A boundary line. The sight hit the civilians hard. Sorensen turned away and gagged. Kapoor leaned against a snowmobile trailer, breathing in shallow bursts. Even O'Hara had to take a second to collect himself. Dwyer stared at the corpse for a long time. Something in him cracked. His voice shook when he said, "We can't shoot what we can't see." Doc replied, "Then we make him come to us." But Hart wasn't coming inside, not yet. He wanted fear, wanted panic, wanted confusion. It made people easier to catch in the white. We got another piece of the puzzle later that night. Sorensen finished thawing the last pages of the journal. They were worse than the earlier ones. Hart had outlived every member of the 1961 team. Storms buried the site. Food ran out. He adapted, broke bones to get to marrow, ate whatever he could find, including them. Cold reshaped him. Years of malnutrition twisted his limbs as he kept growing into adulthood. Once frozen joints thickened from constant frost. Muscles adapted to the brutal terrain. He became a different kind of human. Not supernatural. Just extreme survival pushed past any sane limit. The last entry was from the lieutenant, scrawled and barely readable. Hart hunts now. Not killing for madness, killing to live. I fear he may outlive us all. I closed the journal and didn't say anything for a long time. By morning, the storm hadn't stopped. But something changed. The air felt heavier. The steps around camp grew louder. The scratching on the outer walls more frequent. Heart was getting bolder. Inside the map hut, we pulled together. Me, Doc, Sorensen, O'Hara, and even Dwyer. Fear thick in every breath. We wait here, we die, I said. He's probing us. Studying. He's not afraid. He won't stop. We can't leave in the storm, Dwyer said. Not alive. We're not leaving, I replied. We're going to him. Everyone fell silent. You want to track him during a storm? O'Hara asked. No, I said, but we can mark his pattern. He circles, drifts toward the old crater cuts. He has a base, a nest, a cave, somewhere close enough he can move blind. Doc nodded slowly. He's comfortable here, knows every ridge, every hollow. He'll have shelter nearby. Sorensen pointed at a section of the map with narrow ice crevasses. These areas have deep caverns underneath, warm pockets, places he could hide. He brings bodies somewhere, I said. He stores things. We find it. Then we end this. Dwyer met my eyes. He looked exhausted, broken, but he nodded. Fine. When the storm drops enough to see 10 meters, we move. Small team. Hit him where he sleeps. We all knew it was the only choice. Staying in camp was suicide. Hours later, as we prepared gear and checked weapons, I stepped outside for one last look at the crater. The snow thinned for a brief moment as the wind shifted. Far out near the ridgeline, through swirling white, I thought I saw a tall shape standing perfectly still, watching, waiting. Then the wind blew hard and it vanished again. The storm wasn't done, neither was Hart. But for the first time, we weren't just reacting. We had a direction. Next time, we are going to meet him on his ground. Storm eased enough by morning to see 10, maybe 15 meters. Still bad, but survivable. We moved before anyone second-guessed the plan. No speeches, no motivation, just grim faces and cold gear. Team was small, me, O'Hara, Doc, and Sorensen. No one else could keep steady enough. Dwyer stayed behind to hold camp together, though he looked relieved not to be going. We packed light rifles, flare sticks, small med kit, extra batteries, and a handful of old-school tools. Nothing fancy, nothing heavy. 2001 gear wasn't built for heroics. It was built to not freeze solid. We stepped out into the crater with wind cutting sideways. Air tasted like metal. Snow drifted under our boots, crunching loud enough that I kept wincing. Felt like we were advertising ourselves. O'Hara took point. I stuck close behind him. Doc followed, muttering medical checks under his breath like he always did under stress. Sorensen kept her ice probe in hand, tapping occasionally, listening to the vibration through her gloves. Tracks will be shallow after the storm, she said, but weight this high leaves deeper compression. We can still follow. She was right. The prints were there, faint but present. Long strides, heavy pressure, each one angled toward broken terrain east of the old crater cut. We followed. Terrain got worse as we moved. Ice ridges rose higher. Cracks opened under thin crusts of snow that forced us to slow down. O'Hara found drag marks too. Straight lines carved through the powder, the kind bodies make. The whole time, none of us talked much. Couldn't shake the feeling we weren't alone. Every gust made shadows flicker. I kept gripping my rifle harder than I meant to. After an hour, the storm thinned enough to see the ground clearly. Sorensen crouched near a cluster of rocks and brushed snow aside. Underneath, the ice was worn smooth in a pattern that wasn't natural. He passes through here often, she said. Heading where? O'Hara asked. She pointed at a stretch of jagged terrain where the ice fractured downward into dark crevices. We followed the fractures. The hiss of wind grew lower, muted by the terrain. It felt like stepping into a throat. Then we found it. A massive crevasse gaped in front of us, a narrow mouth in the ice leading down into deeper black. You could feel warmer air rising from it. Not warm enough for comfort, but warmer than outside. A heat pocket. Natural shelter. His den, I said. Doc swallowed. Makes sense. O'Hara scanned the edges. No footprints leaving. He's inside. That meant one thing. We either walked in or turned around and waited to die at camp. We clipped ropes to pitons and descended. The air grew still the moment we dropped below surface level. Quiet, heavy. My breath echoed in my ears. Ice walls glowed faint blue from the light sticks we cracked open. At the bottom, the crevasse opened into a cavern big enough to swallow a small house. The ceiling arched high. Snow dust drifted down in tiny flakes. The ground was uneven, half ice, half frozen earth. Bones covered the floor. Piles of them. Dozens, maybe hundreds. Old ones weathered smooth. New ones still showing sinew frozen stiff. Some belonged to animals. Many were unmistakably human. Doc crouched near a stack. These aren't random. He organizes them. He's not mindless, I said. Never was, Sorensen added softly. In the back of the cavern, against a wall of ice, lay the ruins of 1961 gear blankets frozen into the wall, a metal cup fused in place, a rusted tin opener, and a dog tag hanging from a split piece of wood. Heart. C. U.S. Army. Next to it lay a photo encased in ice. 4 smiling soldiers in cold weather uniforms. One, a young man with a sharp jaw and proud eyes. Corporal Hart before the island changed him. I felt something tight in my chest, but I didn't say it out loud. Sleeping area, O'Hara said, pointing his rifle at a nest-like shape made of torn fabric and hide. The depression was huge, wider than any person should need. Deep enough that something massive could curl inside. He lives here, Doc whispered. Not for long. O'Hara's voice was thin but determined. That's when we heard it. A slow scrape, heavy breath, echoing from the tunnel we hadn't cleared. We spun as Hart emerged. He was taller than I expected, 8.5 feet at least. Shoulders broad but starved, skin pale and cracked like old leather left in the cold. Arms long, hands big enough to crush a skull with little effort. Bones bulged wrong under the skin, remnants of growth warped by starvation and decades of frost. His eyes were black, not empty alert, intelligent, focused. He stopped when he saw us, tilted his head the same way he had on the ridge, studying, recognizing. Hey, Elena, he rasped. My stomach clenched hard. He stepped forward fast. O'Hara fired first. Shot cracked loud inside the cavern. Hart jerked, but didn't fall. He charged, long strides closing the gap in seconds. Move, I shouted. We scattered. Hart slammed into O'Hara, sending him sliding across the ice. Doc grabbed him before he hit a jagged rock. Sorensen swung her probe. It connected with Hart's arm. He growled, distorted, animal-like, but didn't stop. He lunged and struck her with enough force to send her spinning. She hit the ground hard, shoulder twisted at a bad angle. Sorensen, Doc yelled. Hart tried to reach her. I fired twice into his side. He staggered, turned toward me. He didn't yell, didn't roar, just breathed heavy, chest rising slow and steady. I backed toward the ice pillars that held up part of the cavern. Thin spines of frozen water reaching from floor to ceiling. A plan formed. Dangerous, but the only shot we had. Get him over here, I yelled. O'Hara braced his rifle and fired again. The shot clipped Hart's neck. Hart spun toward him, but I shouted loud to draw him back. Hey, Hart turned. Hey, Elena, he muttered again, words grinding out like broken gears. He stepped closer, slow, cautious, his head tilting, his breath fogging in long streams. I kept backing toward the thinnest pillar. Doc dragged Sorensen toward the exit tunnel. O'Hara covered them with shaky aim. Hart reached for me, fingers long, cracked, stiff. I dropped my pack at my feet, yanked out the small block of explosives we brought for emergencies, and slapped it against the pillar. Hart lunged. I dove sideways as he crashed into the ice, cracking it halfway through. The blast cord trailed beside me. He reached again, closer, too close. I pulled the detonator. The charge went off with a deep thump. Ice exploded downward. The pillar collapsed. The ceiling groaned, then dropped. Hart's eyes widened as the entire weight of the cavern fell on him. He didn't scream. He didn't run. He just vanished under tons of ice and frozen earth. We ran. The cavern behind us roared like thunder as more ceiling came down. Ice shattered. Wind rushed through the tunnel as the collapse pulled in air like a lung. We clawed up the rope line, dragging Sorensen between us. My arms burned. My ribs ached from where Hart had clipped me, but we climbed until sunlight hit our faces. The cavern mouth sealed behind us in a rush of snow and echoing silence. Hart was buried. The island went quiet. We stood there in the cold, panting, wounded, shaking, but alive. We had done it, or at least we hoped we had. We stumbled back into camp looking half dead. Sorensen's arm hung useless at her side. O'Hara limped. Doc had blood on his collar that wasn't his. I felt every bruise from the cave fight, each step sending a dull ache through my ribs. We didn't say much. No one asked. The soldiers saw our faces and understood. Whatever happened out there wasn't something you talk about while it's still breathing in your head. Weather cleared by afternoon. Sky pale and clean for the first time in days. Wind dropping low enough to hear the generator hum again. It felt wrong. Too normal after what we'd just crawled through. Dwyer made the call for extraction. This time, the radio actually held long enough to get through. No details. Just medical priority evacuation and camp compromised. They didn't ask for clarification. They didn't want it. When the helo finally came in, rotors cutting down a storm of loose snow, everyone stood outside like survivors from a sinking ship. Civilians huddled close. Soldiers kept rifles in hand until the skids hit the ground. The crew chief waved us forward, eyes scanning the crater like he could feel something watching. Maybe he did. We loaded fast. Sorensen winced as we helped her up. O'Hara climbed in last, looking back at the crater rim the whole time, like he expected Hart to step out from behind the rocks even after we'd buried him. Inside the helo, headsets on, noise pounding in our ears, no one talked. Not even Doc. We just stared out the open door at the island shrinking beneath us. From the air, Devon Island looked like another planet. Pure white. Pure dead. Nothing moved. No sign of the cave we collapsed. No hint that anyone had lived or hunted there. But as we banked away, I spotted something far off on a ridge. Tall. Still. A shape that didn't fit the landscape. I blinked. It stayed. Then cloud cover swept over it, and the shape disappeared. Might have been a trick of light, might have been part of the ridge. I still don't know. At the airfield, command pulled us into a briefing room before anyone even checked Sorensen's shoulder. Officers we didn't know. Cold eyes. Too many bars on their collars. They asked for a report. Dwyer started giving them the truth. Not even the details, just the basics. Unidentified survivor. Mutated physiology from long-term exposure. Aggressive behavior. The senior officer raised a hand. Stom. They handed him a folder labeled Incident Summary, Devon Island. Inside were lines already typed up. Storm exposure, equipment failure, polar bear predation, possible unconfirmed third-party survivalist presence. That was it. Clean. Detached. Safe. A story that wouldn't scare anyone. Dwyer's jaw clenched. That isn't what happened. The officer stared at him. It's what will be recorded. Another leaned forward. You will not deviate from this account. I felt anger rise, sharp and hot, but I swallowed it. Doc didn't say anything. O'Hara looked ready to hit someone. Sorensen stared at the floor, eyes unfocused from pain and exhaustion. Then the senior officer added one line I'll never forget. The island eats its own. He closed the folder. The meeting was over. That was our official truth. We were scattered after that, different posts, different duties. No follow-up interviews, no inquiries. It was like the whole mission never existed. So that's the end of our video. If you made it this far, make sure to hit like and subscribe. It really helps the channel and it's free. And if you want more terrifying encounters like this one, check out the other videos on screen right now. Thanks for watching and stay safe out there. See you soon.